Alright, well, been kind of bored, and I guess since this is the last time I'll get to run my Thunderbolt at this house, I guess I might as well take the opportunity to make a video that I've always thought about making, just in case anybody's ever been curious or, you know, never really understood or ever known how controls work for a Thunderbolt. Now this is a very basic setup. A setup like this would be if the controls and the RCM were all in the same building, such as fire departments would be an example of that. But at the same time, it wouldn't always be that way as well. It could always still have, you know, radio feed coming into the AR timer. But let's just say, for instance, this is a setup where it's at a fire department or, you know, some kind of city or government building where they control it there. They don't have, you know, telephone relays. They don't have any other sort of like long distance way to set them off. So the AR timer is plugged into my wall here, taking in 120 volt. It can also be rewired to take 240 volt directly from the RCM. You'd have to wire it in, I believe, directly past the fuses. Wire it in for 240, switch the numbers around. Same with the wires coming out. Now the way it's set up in here is I got the incoming wires on 8 and 9 and the outgoing wires on 1 and 2. All that basically does is create a fancy relay to activate the siren. Because if I press a button, the circuit between the screws in there closes, meaning the circuit up there at the control point on the RCM closes. And at that point, it then activates the whole siren for whatever, you know, whatever you do, whether you hit attack or alert, whatever. And you can also obviously control it individually. Here, rotator for me is not hooked up because the motor starter is pretty corroded. I got to replace it eventually. So the blower activates the rotator on mine. So if you want to, like, in reality, switching this would be testing the blower, but for me, we're going to pretend that I'm testing the rotator. So you just hit the switch, and that'll send it around. So that would be like if you're doing a visual test and inspection on it, you would just flip the switch, watch it, make sure it does what it's supposed to do, which in that case would be the rotator, not the blower switch. And if it works, then that's great. And the loud buzzing you hear is just the motor starter engaging. The chopper would be the same thing. I have tape over the ports, so there isn't really any sound coming out, but it still creates quite a bit of noise, and it will echo really crazy now that the garage is even more empty than before. But here's, if you were to test the chopper, you would just do this. Takes a minute to wind down, but, you know, and then, so that's how you would use an RCM to visually test the Thunderbolt at the site, which, you know, a lot of people already know that, but, you know, I threw it in there, why not? So, I have it set up for chopper level 5, which is the typical mid-range. You would set at that from the factory, or recommended to be set at that, but you could set it however you wanted. Have the Agostat wired in, the coil wires up top, and then all the numbers here mean different things, and it's wired to where, you know, when you hit something over here, it activates it like it should, basically. One thing though that is interesting that Federal made for like AR timers and just any timer and relay in general was attack always took priority over alert. And typically, during the Cold War, when they were worried about, you know, being bombed and whatnot, typically it was set up to where alert would let everybody know that there's a threat. And then obviously attack would mean that there is an imminent danger, you know, seek shelter and all that. So obviously attack meaning it's, you know, things that are pretty bad, it takes priority over alert. So what's interesting is let's say if something did happen, never did, but let's say if something did happen, they could activate the sirens in alert. But let's say a minute into that cycle, suddenly it's confirmed. You know, a Russian plane's coming and it's about to drop a bomb on some city in the United States. They could send out the tone for attack, and attack would take over, and it would run attack until the cycle was finished. You can go from alert into attack seamlessly, but you cannot go from attack back to alert without hitting cancel first, and I'll demonstrate that too. So I'll put it in alert, let it run for 30 seconds, and then I'll hit attack without touching anything else. So let that wind down. So the timer is still finishing its cycle because I just hit cancel. So as you saw there, I was able to switch to attack seamlessly, but then switching back, it would briefly, you know, bump the chopper up, but it would never stick because, again, attack takes the priority. But as you saw, I was able to hit cancel and then re-hit alert. So, you know, in the event, like, let's say they were testing them like that, they could do the same thing. They could send the alert tone, wait like 30 seconds, send the attack tone, attack would take over, you let it run for maybe a minute. They could send a cancel tone and immediately send an alert tone, and it would switch back to alert and finish the rest of the cycle, which would be very long. But, you know, that's how you go back and forth. So hopefully that's a interesting enough video for anybody who's ever been curious. Hopefully maybe somebody at least gets a little bit of an understanding or whatever. So it was interesting how they started specifically for the Cold War and then transitioned into weather sirens, which is now their primary use besides fire. So there you go. Sorry the video's so long. And hopefully my camera shaking isn't too bad. It's just my phone's old, but